that the wrong way to go is the way the president has gone through the ACA, Obamacare, that my opponent has supported, where there's a $700 billion cut to Medicare. Thousands of West Virginians have lost their Medicare Advantage option. Our home health care system, which is exceedingly important to our seniors through Medicare, is being cut by $700 billion. That, to me, is inexcusable. And that's what Secretary Tennant has supported. What I think we need to do is to look at, and the budget that you're talking about gives the options for seniors to stay in traditional Medicare. If that's what you like, you can stay in traditional Medicare, and that's fine. If you want to look at another option, maybe we ought to look at other options for future generations. This is not for anybody that's 55 or older. It's for the younger generation. Again, our children and grandchildren. There's going to be no Medicare if we don't lay down the arms, stop the name calling and the scare tactics, and really face the problem. And the problem is there's not enough of working people to support the baby boomer generation, like you and I are, that are going to be into the Medicare system before we know it.
Secretary Tennant?
Hoppy, there is no one more serious about cutting a budget than I am. I've proved that, and I've given money back to the taxpayers of West Virginia. But I will not balance a budget off the backs of seniors, as Congresswoman Capito has done. Budgets are about priorities. My priority is West Virginia. Her priority, as she has shown time and time again, is Wall Street. Now, she talks about Medicare, and she talks a good game, but the fact is that those dangerous budgets that she voted for 4 times cut and make Medicare, gut Medicare, and make it a voucher program where she's handing over a coupon to our seniors and say, you're on your own when it comes to buying insurance with insurance companies. Now, don't take my word for it. Take the Alliance for Retired Americans. Take their word for it. This is the record, the lifetime score that they give for Congresswoman Capito. She talks about being on the side of seniors, but certainly not. She has a lifetime score of 18% for our seniors. Right there's the proof.
Secretary Tennant, next question is for you. The state Supreme Court recently ruled 5-0 that the State Election Commission, which you're a member of, erred in not allowing the Republican Party to fill a vacancy on the House of Delegates ballot. Justice Minnis Ketchum said the commission blatantly ignored the law. Justice Alan Lafferty said the actions of the commission, as well as the state's chief election official, you, is both disturbing and unconscionable. Why should West Virginians have faith in your leadership in the Senate when, according to 2 state Supreme Court justices, you and your office failed to correctly interpret the law in this matter?
Hoppy, I first want to make clear that I have stepped up. Our office has absorbed the cost of reprinting the ballots, and the ballots are now getting out in the hands of the voters in the appropriate district, in the 35th district. Now, as you said, and as you read there this was a decision from the 5-member bipartisan group of the State Election Commission, of which the chairman is a Republican. And we looked at the evidence. We looked at the evidence that was out before us. We studied it. We questioned. We debated. We asked questions to those who chose to come to the SEC meeting. And we made a decision based on the evidence that we had. And as you read, the Supreme Court said that we did not get it right. And so we got to work. We got to work, and we corrected the problem, and the Secretary of State's office and the SEC will absorb the cost of those ballots. Now, what I have done as Secretary of State is I have been a good steward of the money for the people of West Virginia. I've cut my budget, I've saved money and given $3 million back to the taxpayers of West Virginia. I have cut fees for businesses to make doing business in West Virginia a whole lot easier. I have made it easier for our military members to be able to vote when they are deployed. And I have aggressively gone after election fraud when we have seen it and we have investigated it.
Congresswoman Capito, your response?
You know, when you're asking for a promotion, the first thing people want to know is, how have you done in your last job? The Supreme Court basically told the Secretary of State, who's the chief elections officer of the state, that she got it wrong, blatantly wrong. And it was obvious it was for political reasons. And so now she's saying that the ballots are going to be reprinted and she's going to absorb the cost. Where does she get her budget? That's the taxpayers. So, you know, I mean, I just am astounded at the explanation. basically what I would say, we made a mistake, we're going over. We're reprinting the ballots, it's October. So I don't think it's been treated fairly. And if you talk about using the office and the competence, let's talk about putting Social Security numbers on your website. Let's talk about putting a conference call number on your website that ran up a bill of over $400,000 to the taxpayers. Let's talk about reprinting ballots. This is not the first time we've had to reprint our ballots. Your job is the chief elections officer, and you're getting it wrong. So I don't know why West Virginians would think that that's a reason to promote you to the United States Senate.
You want to use one of your challenges?
Sure, I would, unless you're just going to let me
Go ahead.
answer that.
Go ahead. 30 seconds, Secretary, for a challenge.
Thank you so much. You know, Congresswoman Capito is just throwing out a whole lot of numbers there and hoping that some of them stick. The number you need to remember is $3 million, and that's what I gave back to the taxpayers. She talks about a conference call. She doesn't have her facts right. She's just purposefully misleading you as citizens. The conference call she's talking about was from the Board of Physical Therapy. And I have a letter here, Congresswoman, and I'll give it to you. It's a letter from AT&T, and it says that that conference call was their fault, and they are paying the bill. So the people of West Virginia never paid it, and here is that information.
Okay.
Did you want to give it to her?
I'll hang on till the end of the debate.
All right.
Pass it along. Okay. This would go to, where are you? All right, Congresswoman Capito. In January 2011, there was a mass shooting in Tucson that killed 6 people and wounded 14 others, including a then fellow member of Congress, Gabby Giffords. The attacker, Jarrett Lee Loeffner, used a Glock 19 with a high-capacity magazine containing 30 rounds. The NRA opposes any restrictions on capacity magazines. You have an A rating from the NRA in their endorsement. Do you support their position on this? And if so, can you make an argument for why an individual has a right to buy a high-capacity magazine?
I do support that, and I'm happy to have their endorsement. West Virginia is a Second Amendment state. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, and that reflected in that endorsement. I know Gabby Giffords. I served with her, and she's a remarkable individual to have recovered from that. And I know she's working hard every day to get back as much health as she can. So best wishes to her and to her husband. You know where I think the main problem is basically the mental health system in this country. We saw that at Newtown. We saw that in Arizona, where the mental health system has failed us tremendously. That's why I've worked with my fellow members of Congress to try to get a mental health system that makes sure that those who shouldn't have access to firearms, that should not, that are in the mental health system, should be disallowed from ever having access to anything, any kind of firearm. That we need to make sure that that is coordinated with all of the different background checks and other things that we do. We've seen that at the Virginia Tech shooting, where that guy was in the mental health system as well, but fell through the cracks. We can't keep going like that. Congressman Murphy in Pennsylvania and I have worked hard to make sure that we're coordinating the mental health system to make sure that these types of incidents don't happen again.
Secretary Tennant, your response?
Hoppy, I think that if you're a law-abiding citizen, you should be able to purchase a weapon. Of course, we want to keep guns out of the hand of terrorists, criminals, and those who have been deemed mentally incompetent. You know, I grew up like so many West Virginians. I grew up on a farm, surrounded by guns, with my brothers going hunting and shooting with them, and of course being the mountaineer and having a muzzleloader myself that I use quite frequently now and keep it around. And so, you know, I don't need the NRA and many West Virginians will certainly agree that they don't necessarily need an outside group to tell them how they stand with guns. Because I represent the Second Amendment. I am strong in saying that West Virginians have a right to have their guns if they are law-abiding citizens. And I myself have a concealed weapons permit and have guns of my own at home.
Let me continue on the gun track, and Secretary Tennant, I'll ask you this question. Senator Manchin's proposed gun control legislation that, among other things, expands background checks for sales at gun shows and over the internet. You said in an interview with MSNBC earlier this year you had questions about the bill. You wanted to get the pulse of West Virginians. Well, you've been out on the campaign trail, so you've talked to a lot of people. So now, do you support or oppose the Manchin bill?
Well, I've said that I have opposed the Manchin-Toomey bill because West Virginians should be making the choice of what they want to happen in West Virginia.
Okay. Any response to that?
Well, I oppose the bill. I've opposed it all the way through. I believe the Secretary's had a change of heart here most recently on that bill, but I've been consistently opposed to that bill.
Secretary Tennant, a July 2014 article in the Gazette said that internet speeds for Frontier, which covers most of the state, meet federal and state standards for minimum speed only 12% of the time. West Virginia lags in both speed and availability of high-speed internet compared with most of the country, according to numerous studies. Internet is vital to the creation of new business. Does the federal government have a role in expanding internet in West Virginia? And if so, what would you do to try to secure funding to expand broadband, and where would that money come from?
Well, Hoppy, that's an interesting question because, yes, internet is so important, especially for the rural parts of our state and especially for job creation as well. And we're seeing that we had this opportunity with the stimulus money that we had, and we need to continue to work on the lines that have been put through and continue to add not just the middle mile, but let's finish the whole mile all the way through. Now, when you talk about job creation, you're exactly right. When we're talking about businesses, small businesses especially. Just last week, the John Deskins, who is the WVU economist, said that our job creation is going to come through small businesses here in West Virginia. And I am a small business owner, and so I look through the eyes of a small business owner in making decisions, and that's why I cut fees in the Secretary of State's office. Now compare that to what Congresswoman Capito has done. She has championed and has written legislation to raise swipe fees on our businesses. Now, what's a swipe fee? Every time you have a credit card or a debit card and it's used, there is a charge associated with it. And it is either the customer who is paying it or the business that is paying it. And as I travel around the state, I've talked to businesses, whether it's the burrito shop in Tucker County or down in Lewis County. These are some of the words I hear. It's terrible. It's killing us. It's our worst enemy. Now, those are coming from small businesses. Congresswoman Capito championed this increase. Wells Fargo spent $6 million lobbying to raise those fees. She sided with Wall Street and Wells Fargo. I will side with our small businesses and job creation.
Congresswoman, a rebuttal?
Well, I'm going to answer the question. I don't know how we got from internet to swipe fees. I guess that was in a pre-debate talking point. But I'll say that we need broadband, I'm deeply disappointed. First of all, the $1 trillion stimulus did not result in any job creation, and we saw what happened with some of the internet broadband money that came into West Virginia. We bought routers that nobody's using, and it was a giant overkill into an area that hasn't been able to be used. Small businesses could probably use that, but it was unusable. So I mean, I think that when I was in Cape and Bridge, which is in Hampshire County, they don't have hardly any connectivity. So how are you going to draw people from the D.C. area into this area for job creation if you don't have the connectivity? This is one of my the infrastructures of tomorrow that we have to have, or actually we need it today. And this is one of my passions for the next several years.
Congresswoman Capito, both you and your opponent have spoken out repeatedly against the EPA's regulations on carbon emissions. The EPA and the Obama administration say they're trying to reduce carbon emissions and get other countries to follow suit to save the planet. A recent report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change concluded, according to the New York Times, that ice caps are melting, water supplies are coming under stress, heat waves and heavy rains are intensifying, coral reefs are dying. Do you believe these scientists are simply wrong? And if they're not wrong, if they're correct, don't we have an obligation to do something about it?
Well, I think that weaving a balance between the economy and the environment is always difficult. And we're faced with it here in West Virginia because we are so heavily blessed with the natural resources that power this country. But the EPA overreach in this administration is unbelievable. The new clean air for the existing coal-fired power plants, not one power plant in the state meets those parameters set out by the president, who, my opponent, supports his policies, so she must support this. And I think that, so what are we supposed to do? Let's have something that makes sense. Let's have technologies that are actually reachable and affordable. And let's, the president says we need to lead on this. Well, if the president's leading the globe on this,